In the year 2000, The Simpsons showed Donald Trump as president. 16 years later, it happened. In 1999, Futurama depicted wrist-mounted computers. 2 decades later, we're all wearing Apple Watches. Coincidence? Time travelers? Or is something far more fascinating going on with our brains? For over 3 decades, The Simpsons has been making jokes about everything from politics to technology. Its sci-fi sister show Futurama, set 1,000 years in the future, has been doing the same thing since 1999, and together these animated comedies have racked up an absolutely mind-boggling list of so-called predictions. We're talking dozens of eerily accurate forecasts, from Super Bowl winners to technological innovations, from political scandals to global pandemics. The internet is absolutely convinced that Matt Groening, the creator of both shows, either has a crystal ball, is a time traveler, or is somehow orchestrating world events. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. The real explanation isn't mystical at all. It's actually way more interesting because it reveals something profound about human psychology, pattern recognition, probability, and how our brains work. Today, we're going deep into the science behind these predictions. We'll explore real examples, unpack the psychological phenomena at play, and discover why humans are so desperate to find patterns, even when they're not really there. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just why The Simpsons and Futurama seem prophetic, but also why you might be seeing patterns everywhere in your own life. And trust me, once you understand this, you'll never look at predictions the same way again. Let's start with The Simpsons. In the episode Bart to the Future, which aired in March 2000, Lisa Simpson becomes president and mentions that the country inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. 16 years later, Donald Trump actually became the 45th president of the United States. Even stranger, a poster in the background of one scene showed Trump with 2024 written on it, and he won re-election for a second term in 2024. That's specific, almost too specific. But hold that thought, we'll come back to it. The show also correctly predicted a Super Bowl winner. In an episode that aired just days before Super Bowl Bandrang, Lisa predicted the Washington Redskins would win. And they did. But it doesn't stop there. The Simpsons has predicted smartwatches, video calling, Apple's design aesthetic years before the iPhone, virtual reality headsets, Lady Gaga's Super Bowl halftime performance, and even details about the Apple Vision Pro. One of the most talked about predictions came from a 1997 episode where a magazine cover in Springfield showed a coronavirus combined with a flu outbreak. Fast forward to 2020, you can see why people think something weird is going on. Now let's talk about Futurama. This show was set in the year 3000, so it had way more freedom to imagine future technology, and somehow, it was incredibly accurate. The show featured VR headsets that looked remarkably similar to modern virtual reality technology. Not the bulky, cyberpunk versions from other sci-fi, but sleek, consumer-friendly designs like the Oculus Quest or Meta Quest. Leela wore a wrist-mounted computer she called her wrist thingy. Basically a smartwatch with all the functionality we have today. Communication, apps, notifications, everything. The show also depicted asteroid deflection technology, pandemic quarantines with eerily specific details, and even mundane uses of virtual reality, like playing virtual skee-ball, which is essentially what we do now with VR recreations of regular activities. Perhaps most disturbingly, Futurama explored deepfake technology and stealing celebrity likenesses, something that has become a genuine ethical concern in 2025. And in one of the darker predictions, Futurama showed suicide booths on street corners. Almost 2 decades later, the Sarko portable assisted suicide capsule passed legal review in Switzerland in 2021. So we've got political predictions, technological predictions, cultural predictions, sports predictions, all from 2 animated comedies. That's at least 30 to 50 major hits, depending on how you count them. The internet is convinced this can't be coincidence. There must be something supernatural going on, right? Well, not quite. And the real explanation is actually way cooler. Let's talk about your brain for a minute, because understanding these predictions isn't really about The Simpsons or Futurama. It's about understanding how human cognition works. The first psychological phenomenon at play is called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a person's tendency to process information by looking for, or interpreting, information that is consistent with their existing beliefs. Here's how it works with The Simpsons. The show has been on the air since 1989. That's over 35 years. It has produced more than 750 episodes. Each episode contains dozens of jokes, references, background gags, and throwaway lines. That's literally tens of thousands of individual predictions about the future. Now, here's the key. We only remember the ones that came true. This is called selective recall, or confirmatory memory. People remember evidence selectively to reinforce their expectations, even if they gather and interpret evidence in a neutral manner. Think about it like this. Imagine you throw 10,000 darts at a dartboard while blindfolded. You're going to hit the bullseye several times just by chance. But if someone only shows you the photos of the bullseyes and ignores the 9,950 darts scattered everywhere else, you'd look like a perfect shot. The show's producer Al Jean actually said exactly this. If you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes. Producer Bill Oakley added, there are very few cases where The Simpsons predicted something. It's mainly just coincidence because the episodes are so old that history repeats itself. But confirmation bias is just part of the story. Humans are also absolutely obsessed with finding patterns, even in random noise. This is called apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. It's why you see faces in clouds, hear hidden messages in songs played backward, or think your horoscope is describing your exact life. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It evolved this way for good reason. Spotting patterns helped our ancestors survive. That rustling in the grass could be wind, or it could be a predator. Better to assume it's a predator and be wrong than to assume it's wind and be lunch. But in the modern world, this hyperactive pattern detection creates false positives everywhere. Your brain is constantly connecting dots that don't actually connect. There's another logical fallacy at play here called the Texas Sharpshooter Fallacy. The name comes from a joke about a Texan who shoots at the side of a barn, then paints a target around the bullet holes to make it look like he's a perfect shot. This is exactly what happens with Simpsons predictions. The show makes thousands of jokes about the future. When one of them comes true, we paint the target around it by calling it a prediction and ignoring all the jokes that were completely wrong. For instance, The Simpsons predicted we'd have flying cars and food pills by now. We don't. They predicted hoverboards in 2015 during their Back to the Future parody. We got a segue. But nobody talks about those predictions because they didn't come true. We only cherry-pick the successes. There's one more psychological trick at play. Many of these predictions are actually pretty vague or inevitable. Take the Trump presidency prediction. Here's the thing. Trump had been publicly discussing running for president since the 1980s. He flirted with Reform Party candidacy in 2000, the same year that Simpsons episode aired. The writers weren't being prophetic. They were making fun of something Trump was already talking about. It's like predicting that a celebrity couple will break up. If you predict enough celebrity breakups, you'll be right a lot, because most celebrity relationships end. Similarly, predicting smartwatches and video calling isn't that remarkable. Scientists and futurists had been discussing these concepts for decades. Dick Tracy had a two-way wrist radio in comics from the 1940s. Star Trek showed video calls in the 1960s. The Simpsons and Futurama weren't predicting the future. They were extrapolating from current trends and existing ideas in science fiction. That's not prophecy. That's educated guessing. Okay, we've covered the psychology. Now let's get into the hard science. Probability and statistics. Because when you actually do the math, these predictions become a lot less mysterious. There's a fundamental principle in statistics called the law of large numbers. Simply put, the more times you try something, the more likely you are to get any specific outcome. If you flip a coin once, you have a 50% chance of getting heads. But if you flip it 1,000 times, you're virtually guaranteed to get heads at least once. Probably around 500 times actually. The Simpsons and Futurama combined have made thousands upon thousands of jokes about future events. When you make that many predictions, some of them will come true just by random chance. But here's something most people don't know. The writers' rooms for both shows are packed with incredibly smart people. We're talking PhDs in mathematics, physics, and computer science. Al Jean, a key producer, has said these are educated guesses rather than predictions. These writers study trends in technology, politics, and culture. They read scientific journals, attend conferences, and talk to experts. When they make jokes about the future, they're not pulling ideas out of thin air, they're making informed extrapolations. Think about the smartwatch prediction. In the 1990s, tech companies were already experimenting with wearable computing. PDAs like the Palm Pilot were popular. Cell phones were getting smaller. It didn't take a genius to think, hey, what if we combined these technologies and put a computer on your wrist? That's not prophecy. That's just following the trajectory of technological development. Some predictions are just inevitable. Take the pandemic quarantine predictions from Futurama. Pandemics have been part of human history forever. We've had major disease outbreaks every few decades for centuries. Public health experts have been warning about pandemic preparedness for decades. It wasn't a matter of if there would be another pandemic, but when. Futurama making jokes about pandemic quarantines wasn't prophetic. It was acknowledging an obvious ongoing risk. The same goes for many technology predictions. If you understand the principles of technological progress, you can make pretty good guesses about what's coming. Moore's law predicted that computing power would double every 2 years. If you know that, you can predict that computers will get smaller, more powerful, and more integrated into daily life. That's exactly what both shows depicted. And here's the crucial part. For every accurate prediction, there are dozens that completely missed the mark. The Simpsons thought we'd all be living in dome cities by now. We're not. Futurama predicted robot labor would be ubiquitous by now. While we have some automation, we're nowhere near having Bender-level robots serving us drinks and bending girders. Both shows completely missed the rise of social media, which has arguably been the biggest technological and cultural shift of the 21st century. No Facebook, no Twitter, no Instagram, no TikTok. They also didn't predict smartphones becoming the most important device in human history. In The Simpsons' future, people still use landlines and payphones. In Futurama, they use video phones attached to walls. If these shows could really predict the future, wouldn't they have seen the biggest technological revolution of our time coming? Let's do some quick math. If The Simpsons has made 10,000 jokes or references about future events, which is actually a conservative estimate, and only 50 of them came true, that's a success rate of 0.5%. 0.5%. You know what has a better prediction rate? A broken clock, which is right twice a day. If you threw random darts at a wall of possible future events, you'd probably do about as well. The impressive thing isn't that some predictions came true, it's that people forget all the ones that didn't. Okay, so we've debunked the mystery. The Simpsons and Futurama aren't mystical oracle shows. They're just smart satires with writers who pay attention to trends and make thousands of guesses, some of which happen to be right. But here's why this matters beyond just debunking a fun internet conspiracy. Understanding these psychological biases is crucial for navigating the modern world. Every single day you're exposed to patterns that aren't real. Conspiracy theories thrive on the same psychological principles we've discussed today. Someone strings together a bunch of unrelated events, finds some coincidental connections, ignores all the evidence that doesn't fit, and suddenly they've proven that a secret cabal controls the world. This is confirmation bias in action. People seek out information that supports their views while ignoring or dismissing evidence that contradicts them. Understanding how your brain naturally looks for patterns helps you resist misinformation. When you see a list of 20 times X predicted Y, you can now ask, okay, but how many times did X make predictions that failed? What's the actual hit rate? These same biases affect your daily decisions. You might think your horoscope is accurate because you only remember the times it seemed to describe your day. You forget all the times it was completely off. You might believe a friend has a sixth sense about relationships because they predicted 3 breakups, but you forgot that they also predicted 5 relationships would last. And those couples broke up anyway. You might think you're always right about first impressions, but that's often because you only remember the times you were correct and rationalize away the times you were wrong. This doesn't mean you should become a cynical person who never finds meaning in patterns. Pattern recognition is valuable. It's how we learn, how we make predictions, and how we understand the world. The key is calibrated skepticism. Ask questions. Look for the misses alongside the hits. Consider alternative explanations. Calculate the actual probability. When someone tells you about an amazing prediction or coincidence, your first question should be, what's the sample size? How many predictions were made total? Am I only seeing the successes? Here's the beautiful thing. Understanding all this doesn't make The Simpsons and Futurama less impressive. It actually makes them more impressive. These shows have lasted so long because they have brilliant writers who understand culture, technology, and human nature deeply. They're not predicting the future. They're creating smart, observant satire about the present that happens to remain relevant. When The Simpsons makes fun of political corruption, they're not predicting specific scandals. They're commenting on the eternal nature of political corruption. When Futurama shows technology making life more complicated, they're not seeing the future. They're observing a trend that's been happening since the Industrial Revolution. That's not prophecy. That's good writing. And honestly, that's way more impressive than having a crystal ball. So let's bring this home. The Simpsons and Futurama haven't predicted the future through mystical powers or time travel. What they've done is make thousands of educated guesses based on current trends, written by smart people who pay attention to the world. Some of those guesses came true because of probability. Make enough predictions, and some will hit. Some came true because they were logical extrapolations of existing technology, and some came true because they were about inevitable recurring events. Our brains make these coincidences seem more meaningful than they are through confirmation bias, pattern recognition, and selective memory. We remember the hits and forget the misses. We paint targets around the bullet holes, but here's what you should take away from this. Being aware of these biases makes you smarter. It helps you evaluate claims more critically. It protects you from manipulation, and it helps you appreciate good satire for what it really is: smart observation, not prophecy. The next time someone shows you a video about predictions that came true, you'll know to ask, what's the full picture? How many predictions failed? Is this really impressive, or is it just statistics? The Simpsons and Futurama remain brilliant shows not because they can see the future, but because they understand the present so deeply that their satire remains timeless. And that, to me, is far more interesting than any prediction. What do you think? Have you fallen for confirmation bias in your own life? Are there any predictions you used to believe that now seem like just probability? Let us know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your examples. If this video changed how you think about patterns and predictions, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Mind and Marvel for more deep dives into psychology, science, and the fascinating tricks your brain plays on you. Thanks for watching. Keep thinking critically, and keep marveling at the science of the human mind.